On this channel, I have ranked every single collaboration item. I've ranked most mobility items, so why don't I just combine the two and rank every single collaboration mobility item in Fortnite history. These are, of course, as the name suggests, mobility items that are collaborations into Fortnite, so items that come from different franchises, of course. ODM gear, Batman grapnel gun, all that type of stuff, those will all be included in this video. If you guys go on to enjoy this content, be sure to use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop, and make sure you're subscribed if you're not already, because once I hit 50k, I will be ranking every single named location in Fortnite history, and you're not going to want to miss that one. Also, if you're interested in creating the thumbnail for that 50,000 subscriber special video, be sure to check my community post for more instructions on how to do that, or my Twitter. It's all linked in the description. With all that being said, let's finally get into this ranking. At our number 15 spot on this list, clearly, in my opinion, the worst collaboration mobility item in Fortnite history, it is the Stark Jetpack. I actually think a lot of you may not even know that this item existed. It was barely in the game for Chapter 2, Season 4, and it basically just functioned like your regular jetpack. Unfortunately for this item, there have just been so many better jetpacks in Fortnite history, and we're going to see actually a couple more ahead of it on this list. Specifically, War Machine's hover jets absolutely blow the Stark Jetpack out of the water and honestly make it one of the more forgotten items, I would argue, Fortnite has ever seen. And just barely ahead of the Stark Jetpack at the number 14 spot is, well, the Mandalorian's jetpack. And the only thing that puts the Mando's jetpack a little bit higher than Stark's is the Mandalorian's jetpack is actually infinite. Well, not really infinite. The fuel can run out, but it always will recharge itself. So you'll always have an infinite amount of fuel, whereas the Stark jetpack will eventually run out of fuel and you will lose the item. I mean, I think a lot of people like the Mandalorian, but I don't think anyone was really hunting for his jetpack. Most people really wanted his Amband sniper rifle. I also just remember this jetpack being incredibly buggy. I don't know if that's just like a flawed memory of my brain through Chapter 2, Season 5, but let me know in the comment section below if that's the case. I know for myself, whenever I would go to hunt down the Mandalorian, I would honestly just leave his jetpack there. I wouldn't even take it. I would just take the sniper rifle. But honestly, I think we can both admit these jetpacks are pretty bad. At the number 13 spot is actually two items. It's the Carnage and Venom symbiote. They actually function exactly identically to one another. And this is actually quite an interesting pick, and it was tough to rank because this isn't really a mobility item. I mean, I guess it kind of is, and that's why it's on this list, because its primary ability, yes, is to grab players through walls and you deal, I think it was 60 damage, similar to how the smash and grab worked from Chapter 2, Season 4. But don't forget that it also has a secondary ability, which is glider redeploy and low gravity, so that makes it a mobility item. Glider redeploy is good, right? But on this list, there are just so many stronger mobility items that do so much more than just let you redeploy your glider that I really couldn't put it any higher on this list. It is still a really, really cool item, and it does have multiple abilities, so I will give it that. At number 12 is Groot's Bramble Shield from Chapter 2, Season 4, of course. You know, it seemed like with Chapter 5, there were so many good mobility items, and since we got another Marvel season, I was honestly expecting something about the Groot's Bramble Shield to come back, but they didn't at all. And so the Groot's Bramble Shield has not come back since Chapter 2, Season 4. It's kind of been forgotten about. It is a decent mobility item, right? It's one of those items, actually one of the few items in Fortnite history where you are completely invulnerable. When you are in the Bramble Shield, you are safe for just a few seconds, and there's not a lot of items in Fortnite history that can say that they do that. You also do get white heals. I believe it was like 20 every couple of seconds. I think it ended up being 60 white heals in total. I mean, let's be honest, the mobility aspect isn't really great here. I mean, you can travel maybe 100, 150 feet max with one use of the Bramble Shield, but it recharges over a pretty quick amount of time, so you technically have an infinite mobility item here, which is very good. If it gave you more white heals, I would say that it deserves to be a little bit higher, but honestly, at this point in the list, there are just so many better collab mobility items. And one of those items at number 11 is Batman's grapnel gun from Season X. And I gotta ask you guys in the comment section a question about this item, because that honestly could change where it is ranked. Could you cancel the Batman grapnel gun glider animation like you could with Jules's glider gun? That is the big question that I honestly don't even remember the answer to. My gut is telling me no, you couldn't, but again, you guys will just have to let me know in the comment section. This item was exactly what it says it is. It is a Batman grapnel gun. It lets you redeploy like these cool Batman gliders and essentially just fly around the map, but for a limited amount of uses. It's one of the very few DC collabs we've ever gotten in Fortnite. They really don't do in-game collaboration items with DC characters, which is kind of sad. Marvel always ends up getting the better end of the stick, but the grapnel gun is actually pretty decent. The only problem is, if I'm right, you have to auto-deploy that glider. So if you're trying to, grapple onto somebody, you're going to get screwed over for a couple of seconds until that glider animation is over. Moving on to number 10, we have one of our most recent items in this list. It is Shuri's Black Panther claws, of course, Chapter 5, Season 4. Again, I think this is another item that teeters being a mobility item, right? For me, I definitely consider it to be one. I think you also could play devil's advocate and make an argument that this really shouldn't be considered a mobility item and just strictly a melee item. But I would actually argue that when you fully charge up these claws, you use the kinetic ability that lets you have the infinite sprint and infinite charge up for a couple seconds. That thing can absolutely send you across the map. It's really good. It's also just really tough to kill somebody who's using these claws. You can dash right, dash left, you can go flying in front of them, go flying backwards. It's a really fun item to use. The theming feels great. When you put these claws on, you start sprinting and you start doing the panther claw run on all fours. I think that's super sweet. I just think that when you don't have that kinetic ability charged up, it's just like any other regular melee item, which is not really great. You guys know what I'm talking about. When you don't have that ability, you're just kind of running out with the claws, but once you do have that ability, you can travel so far in a quick period of time. Moving on to our number 9 spot, I think this is going to be a little bit of a controversial one. It is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle mythics. Similarly to Shuri's Black Panther claws, I think you could make the argument that these shouldn't really count as mobility items, but I would actually definitely contend that. I mean, think about the kinetic blade, right? Everybody thinks of that as a mobility item, and the TMNT mythics do the exact same thing. You get the 3 charges and the blade dash effect similarly to the kinetic blade, so I don't see why this wouldn't be considered a mobility item. Again, any watchers of this channel know, I am not a fan of melee weapons. I really don't like them. But what I do really like is the kinetic blade, and so to me, this item feels like a good mix between the kinetic blade and just a regular melee weapon. I also think it really helps that a lot of people are big fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and so I think a lot of people just naturally kind of gravitated towards these items. Their theming is cool, they're fun to use, and I think they're actually pretty practical. They're decent. I think you actually could make the argument they should be a couple spots higher up on this list. At our number 8 spot is Silver Surfer's board. So this is another interesting one, actually, because there is another item on this list that is almost identical to this. Silver Surfer's board at any time you want allows you to basically just fly up in the air. It doesn't matter if you're in a 1x1, you press it, it'll let you fly up into the air, deploy the glider, and also more importantly, drop from the glider whenever you want with no fall damage. Honestly, I think most people use the Silver Surfer's board as almost more of like a panic button, right? If you get boxed up real quick, just switch to the board, fly up in the air, kind of reassess the situation. If you want to drop back on top of somebody and get high ground, yeah, you could totally do that. Or if you wanted to escape the fight, you could just kind of glide off into the distance. But there is actually one thing that separates it from our number 7 spot, which is the Nimbus Cloud, which essentially does the same thing. But the main difference between them is actually the Nimbus Cloud only has a cooldown of 20 seconds, whereas Silver Surfer's board has a cooldown of 30 seconds. And that 10-second difference is actually massive. I know 10 seconds doesn't really sound like a lot, but let me just put into perspective here. If you guys have ever played Fortnite Reload and you're waiting for your boy to just survive so you can reboot, man, those 10 seconds, 15 seconds feel like a lifetime. 10 seconds in Fortnite time is very different than 10 seconds in real time, right? I mean, I guess it just kind of ends up being which one you like better, whether you like the theming of the Nimbus Cloud better versus Silver Surfer's board. I guess you could interchange them, but I think I got it right here. At number 6 is another recent item from Chapter 5, Season 4. It is Iron Man's flight kit. In terms of just going from point A to point B, like if I were to point out on the map and just be like, I need you to go from one corner of the map to another, I think Iron Man's flight kit has an argument to be the best item in Fortnite history at doing that. And I think it's especially helped out by the fact that most of the weapons in Chapter 5 are wildly inaccurate, mainly just because they're not hit scan and they're projectiles. So hitting someone out of the air is incredibly difficult with any real fully automatic weapon, or I guess really just any weapon in Chapter 5 as a whole. And so that helps any of these Chapter 5 items where you're going to be flying in the air. whereas some of these earlier items from Chapter 2 where, you know, it wasn't hit scan and you could just get beamed, absolutely fried gliding out of the air. With that being said, though, if you do get hit by a couple bullets, you're essentially screwed, right? You go flying towards the ground, you crash into the ground, you're kind of stuck in that weird animation for a couple seconds, and honestly, you're just a sitting duck at that point. It reminds me of like the shockwave hammer if you miss and you get stuck in the ground. In terms of just like pure mobility, though, Iron Man's flight kit definitely deserves to be high up on this list, and it is. Also, not to mention, it was like pretty easy to find these things. It almost felt like they were everywhere on the map, and with so many good mobility items in Chapter 5 Season 4, I think Iron Man's flight kit definitely sticks out as being one of the best. But it's just beat out by what I believe to be the best mobility item in that season, at our number 5 spot, is War Machine's hover jets. I honestly can't even go into the entire history of the hover jets because they have been buffed and mainly nerfed so many times during the span of Chapter 5 Season 4. They went from being incredibly powerful and easily probably the number 2 or 3 spot on this list to being nerfed time and time again, and at the end of the season, it was just almost like they were beat into the ground so badly that a lot of people weren't even taking them. But I think we can all agree for the majority of Chapter 5 Season 4, Fortnite started to feel like a shooting mosquito simulator with everyone having hover jets and just dashing, flying around the air left, right. It felt like this item was a crutch. You had to have it, and I think a lot of people will agree on that. While I absolutely hated fighting people who had hover jets, especially when you don't. I mean, if you're going up against someone who has the jets and you don't, you can basically just buy a ticket to go back to the lobby. You're probably going to lose that fight. That is really unfortunate because that is mainly a luck-based thing, just where you're going to find a hover jet before the other person. I will say that they were incredibly fun to use, and I guess that does hold some weight in ranking on this list. Moving on to number 4, another Chapter 5 item, it's Ride the Lightning. This is, bar none, one of Fortnite's most creative items they have ever added in this entire history of this game. It is so fun to use. It's so unique. There is genuinely nothing like Ride the Lightning. You just get this sick, like, heavy metal guitar. You press the button, you go flying into the air, then you do like 3 dashes, and then you go flying back down towards the ground. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, you literally ride the lightning. You turn into a lightning bolt and you go flying into the air. Now, while I have been glazing Ride the Lightning, there is a downside to this item, and that is essentially that you don't have to have this item to use it. And that's a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because if you have one player on your team, you're playing squads, who uses this, you guys can all follow him. And so all 4 of you get that great mobility, but that also means that the enemies can follow you as well. So if you try to use Ride the Lightning to get away from somebody and you're incredibly weak, well, they're just going to follow you and kill you. So it has its pros and cons, right? But I think the pros outweigh the negatives. It's essentially just a cooler, better version of a Rift to Go. You can travel so far in a short period of time. And let me just say something. The fact that actual snippets of Ride the Lightning by Metallica play in the background as you use this, it is so unique, so cool. And I don't have enough positive things to say about Ride the Lightning. If you didn't get to use this item, I really feel sorry for you. It is a really cool item. Besides being cool, though, it's actually very practical. It's good. And we have cracked the top 3. At that number 3 spot is going to be airbending. And let me just say something. Chapter 5's mobility was off the charts good. I mentioned it in one of my videos recently. If there's one thing that Chapter 5 did right, it was absolutely mobility. I mentioned earlier with Iron Man's flight kit that in terms of just getting from point A to point B, there might not be a better item in Fortnite history than the flight kit for doing that, but I could see an argument for airbending to be in that discussion. Airbending almost seems like a precursor to the chainsaw, almost like they function very similarly. And if you're wondering why the chainsaw is not in this video, the chainsaw isn't a specific Fortnite collaboration. You know, people will say it's a reference to something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of course, for Fortnitemares, but it is technically not an official collaboration item, so I did not put it on this list. But yeah, anyways, back to airbending. It is actually the only avatar item that is not used for dealing damage, and you can basically just traverse around the entire map wherever, whenever you want, by using the air wheel. So you go inside of it, you can sprint, you can jump, you can do an air jump that basically just like launches yourself. Some people will try and make the argument that this is the best avatar item. I would say waterbending was just a little bit better and actually kind of overshadowed airbending. But man, airbending is really good for mobility. It is an incredible Fortnite item, and it's a shame that we may never see it come back. At our number 2 spot, this really shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. It's the ODM gear. So as you all know, ODM gear came with, I believe it was Chapter 4, Season 2. It's the Attack on Titans collab. I mean, realistically, what do I even say about the ODM gear that I haven't said in like 10 other videos previously? I mean, you guys all know how ODM gear works. It is probably one of Fortnite's most popular items they've ever added. This item is seriously just absolutely beloved by the Fortnite community. I swear I could just make a community post, no caption, no nothing, just put a picture of the ODM gear, and I would get hundreds of comments of people telling me how much they love this item. And that's obviously for a good reason. I mean, the mobility you get with it is amazing. It is so fun to use. You just glide from tree to tree to tree, just swinging wherever you want. You also have that really sick attack ability that like locks on to the player. You know, again, like I don't have any attachment to this collaboration. Like I'm not like an Attack on Titan fan, but I'm a big fan of the ODM gear. So for that, I absolutely love this item. And there's a high chance we never see it again. So if you didn't get to use it, I really apologize for that. But at our number 1 spot on this list, there should be no surprises, no argument. It's always number 1 in my mobility videos, my collab videos, everything. It is the Spider-Man and Spider-Verse web shooters. If you are subscribed to my channel, be sure to do that if you're not already. You guys will see that I did make a community post about Fortnite collaboration mobility items and asking what your favorite ones were, and by far an overwhelming majority of people on that video said these Spider-Man web shooters were their favorite, and I would agree with you guys. This item was basically the precursor to the ODM gear. The whole swinging mechanic, all of that was pioneered by this item. I honestly don't know that there's a more fun item to use in Fortnite than this item. Again, I did put the Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse web shooters here because they function literally identically. They have the same stats, they do the exact same thing. There is not anything that is different between these items besides their aesthetic. The mobility is incredible. The third partying, yes, does get very, very annoying with this item, but honestly, you could say that about any item on this list. Normally, I have a tough time figuring out what I'm going to put at the number 1 spot, but this video may be one of my easiest ever to put at number 1. Obviously, it was going to be the Spider-Man web shooters. All right, well, yeah, that was my ranking for every single collaboration mobility item in Fortnite history. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on this list, and be sure to drop a suggestion for what you'd like to see my next video to be. As I'm recording this video, of course, the Ice Spice grappler is not in the game, but if it was in the game, that would be included on this list. It's rumored to just be an icy grappler, so nothing crazy. Be sure to subscribe because that 50K subscriber special is underway, and once that comes out, you're going to want to be one of the first ones there. If you went on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave it a like, and I will catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace.